Hi, everybody. Today this is not going to be a formal review per se. It's going to be more of a highlight of this little book, The Shape of Our Lives, from the new publisher Englewood Press. And I'm going to say a quick kind of disclaimer about my relationship to the publisher of this book, and then I am going to give you some of my honest thoughts about it. So it is a little bit of a review, but it's more of just a highlight. I just kind of want to let people know about this book for a few reasons. So first of all, Englewood Press, this is the publisher. They are a connection. They have a connection to the Englewood Review of Books, which might be obvious if you follow that or have known about that. C. Christopher Smith is the founding editor of that. He's also written a few books, like Slow Church in particular. That got some notoriety several years ago. Anyways, I'm friends with Chris, and I've been very involved with the Englewood Review. I've followed them for a long time, for about 10 years, and then I got involved with them. I've written a lot of reviews for them. I produced the podcast for them. I really, really like what the Englewood Review does. I think they have a very broad-minded approach towards kind of supporting the life of reading in the life of the Christian in our culture. I just have always liked the width and breadth of what they put their attention and energy to, which is why I started following them years ago. It's why I started to get involved with them. Anyways, I'm saying all that to say that I'm very broadly supportive of Englewood. I like what they do. I like the ethos of what they do. I'm friends with people there. And so I was excited when Chris decided to take on publishing to get into kind of putting books out in the world, and this is the first one. It's called The Shape of Our Lives. Like I said, it's from Englewood Press is the name of the publisher now. So I didn't want to do like a formal review because of all those connections that I have. And kind of like I want to support what they're up to. So this is not that. This is more of a just, hey, this book exists. Here is genuinely what I think about it, and maybe you'd be interested in it. That's kind of what this video is. So I'm calling it more of like a book highlight. So what is The Shape of Our Lives? It's a very small book. First of all, this is kind of the main idea of it. It's a very small book about congregational formation. So this is a book about how does participation in life in a community actually form us as people, individually, but also corporately, like communally. How is a congregation formed in a corporate sense, but also how are individuals formed as part of the congregation? And that's kind of the broad view of what this little book is talking about, but it dives underneath the surface of the idea of formation in a few ways. And this is what I like about it. It gets into it dives down into first defining formation, but then diving into desires. How are desires at play in our formation? How are our desires shaped? And then there's also how are our convictions kind of at play in our formation? So it reminds me a little bit of the work of someone like Jamie Smith, or more of just a broadly Augustinian kind of look at formation of like the role of desires. What role does desire play in how we are formed, or how we actually participate in forming other people? So it's super thoughtful, and it's like trying to get under the surface of those things, and then discussing formation into character and virtue, how virtues play out as our desires are formed in certain directions or not formed in other directions. And then at the end, it does get into a little bit more brass tacks when it talks about things like institutions. So, and then there's the life of the church as a formal institution. How do these things flow into practices that are contained or supported within an institutional framework? And how can churches think more carefully and thoughtfully about the practices that they do or do not engage in as it relates to forming the people that are part of the community? And there's going to be a wide range of reactions to that depending on how, quote, high church or low church your context might be. Anyways, but that's what the book does. It walks you through in a super, super approachable format, some like short chapters on each of those topics. So it's trying to get you to dig into maybe past the like shallower, more superficial ways we think about the goal of the church. Honestly, it's kind of thinking about how do we press into deeper goals than just maybe growth or numbers or budgets or whatever, but how do we think about forming people? So that's what the book is about. I'm just going to say a couple things about the book, some things that I like, and some things maybe for you to think about if you're considering what is this book and how might I use this book or not or whatever. I'm just going to give you some thoughts. So first of all, probably one of the big takeaways is this book is extremely accessible and short and readable. And I think, so on the one hand, it's not going to be the kind of book that if you've read deeply of, I mentioned Jamie Smith earlier. If you've read a bunch of Jamie Smith, you're not going to pick this up and be blown away by any new ideas per se. You're not going to have your paradigm wrecked by this little book. But so it's not that kind of a book. What this is a book that I can very, very, very easily imagine, and I'm thinking about doing this I'm a pastor, I'm thinking about, exploring this book in a small group kind of context. I can imagine a small group, 8 to 12 people, who have a wide range of reading experience. I can imagine people in a small group who have no reading experience being completely fine reading this book because it's so accessible. The chapters are super short and clear, and there's really thoughtful questions like with each chapter topic that I think could be just like a softball in terms of if you're thinking about leading a small group discussion or a book group discussion. I think this book is like pitch perfect for that kind of experience. So just know that those are my thoughts on like kind of the practical utility of this book. A couple of the things I do like about it though, and one thing, so I like the general approach of trying to dig under the surface, getting into desire and virtue and character conviction. I just like that approach. I think it's really helpful to get people to reflect in that way. So I'm on board with that philosophically. But another specific thing I really like about this book is it has a kind of an ecumenical appeal. Like I legit can imagine this being used by like, super, let's just use the stereotypical, like super progressive, mainline, more high church, Anglo-Catholic liturgical small group. I can imagine them using it. And I can imagine the low church, Baptistic, cessationist, whatever, just go down the line. I can imagine both of them using this book, really, truly. And I think that that's not typical. Like, I don't think there's anything in here that would offend or push away either of those kind of two examples I just used on either ends. And I think that's pretty significant. So I think that's one of the things that sets this book apart. In addition to its length and its accessibility, I think that it's broad appeal because it gets into those deeper layers. This is not about doctrines. It's not about, it doesn't debate different approaches to baptism or the Eucharist or anything like that would potentially alienate some readers. It's more just about how do we think about our formation into wise and mature people, and what role do we play in a community, and what role does the community play in our lives, and to get people to kind of think more deeply and carefully about that together. If this book can help people do that, I think that'd be a massive win. So, so those are my thoughts on this. Is my highlight of the book, The Shape of Our Lives, from Englewood Press. It actually has 4 authors: Philip Kennison, I should have said at the beginning, Deborah Dean Murphy, Jenny C. Williams, Stephen Fowle, and James Lewis. 5 authors, rather. They kind of all worked together in the Ecclesia Project to put this out. So there you go. Those are some of my thoughts. Hopefully that was helpful to kind of introduce a book to you that maybe if you're in a context of leading a church or in leadership at a church, this might honestly be a really, really good thing for you to go through with a small group. Those are my thoughts on Shape of Our Lives. Thanks as always for taking a minute to watch.